lead your family. We talk about it at our church all the time. Our goal is to help you lead your family to follow after Jesus. And we know that comes with a lot of unknowns whenever it is coming to technology and screens and just what's happening in the culture. And so I'm super excited. We have our friends from Protect Young Eyes here. We have Scott McKellen and Dave Thomas. Chris McKellen. Why did I say Scott? I was like, that's, as soon as I said it, I was like, I know that's not right, but I'm just going to butcher it on the get-go. So I am a professional here, obviously. Fantastic. Great way to start the day. Well, hey, we just want you to know that we're so excited that you're here, and we want to partner with you any way that we can. And what we're going to do here in a little bit, we will have a little bit of a break, but I want to make sure that you sign your name on the little cards at the table as you come in, because we want to give away some of the free resources that they have recommended for you in your home to help you answer some of these questions and continue the conversation once you leave here, because there's going to be a lot of information given here, and so we just want to walk alongside you guys. And I can't recommend their website and their blog and their resources enough, that they constantly send out different app updates and different things to think about, so that you can always be as up to date as your children and as your students are when it comes to dealing with technology and the conversation that's happening around that. So I'm going to open this in a word of prayer, and I'm just going to hand it over to these guys, because there is a ton of content to cover, and Chris and Dave are going to lead us in the time tonight, and so we look forward to that. So God, I thank you so much for just the families that are represented here tonight, God, that you are doing a work in their homes, and I praise you for that. God, we know that raising children today comes with its own unique set of challenges and opportunities. And so, God, I pray that we would see technology as an opportunity to help point our kids to you, to help raise our kids to be able to process what's going on around them in their lives and in their worlds and in their friends' life, so that they walk in a closer relationship with you. God, I pray the same prayer that Jesus prayed for us in John 17, that God, you don't remove us from the world, but you protect us from the evil one in it. And I pray that for these homes. I pray that for our kids and for our students, God, that you would do an incredible work in their lives, God, because your name is worth it. So God, be glorified in our conversation tonight. We love you and we thank you for Jesus. It's in his name we pray. And everybody said, amen. I hand it over to Chris.
Thanks, Jeff. Luke. Really happy to be here. And yeah, the night after Halloween. So I'm impressed. Maybe this is the relief. It's like, get me out of there. I've been stuck with candy-crazed kids. And when Halloween falls at the end of the week, and you'll see mine and Dave's family here in a little bit, that's a cruel calendar location for Halloween, because they wake up Monday and the whole week is just pointing in that direction. So if there are any educators in the room, God bless you, because I know you've been dealing with kids that have not been focused on anything in the classroom for 4 straight days, and I get that, very empathetic to that. So yeah, we are so happy to be here. You got one of the folders that the church was gracious enough to put together. There's a note-taking guide in there on the left-hand side, which will be a key document to be writing things down. And that's our hope, to write a lot of things down. But what I don't want that to become is this overwhelming, paralysis-inducing, guilt-ridden list of things that you feel, oh my gosh, if I haven't done all of these things by the time Monday morning arrives, I'm a horrible parent. And no, that's not what this is intended to do. In fact, I firmly believe that every single one of you in the room already have most of what it takes to raise kids who can learn how, and grandkids and nieces and nephews who can learn how to use technology well before you've written anything down. And I hope that becomes very clear to you. The enemy wants us to think that it's way too complex, that we can't do this. I grew up analog, Chris. I don't get it. It's not my... No, listen. You already have what it takes. You are uniquely equipped to raise your sons and daughters, yes, in the digital age, yes, sons and daughters who can't get enough YouTube, who can't put Snapchat down. Yes, you're equipped to raise them in all of those environments already. There's some technical parts to that sure, we'll show you where to find that stuff out. But I'm firmly convinced that if you do certain things that you already know how to do consistently and persistently enough, you tend to produce children who learn how to use technology well. All right? And so I want to just start off with some of those things. And what I want to start off with, and the team will be ready to show this in the back, is back in July, Protect Young Eyes had the opportunity to testify in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, who was having a hearing on July 9th on protecting childhood innocence. and I was invited to D.C. for what was a terrifying but fascinating and very gratifying experience to share what is a 6-minute testimony, but it really is this, what I call thesis of a lot of the things that we've discovered in social media platforms that sort of form a basis for why we feel so passionate about helping parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles like you help them use technology well. We are a pro-technology organization. I do not want any of you to walk out of here and bubble wrap your children from technology, bubble wrap your grandchildren from technology. I don't want any of you to walk out of here and smash the iPhone when you get home. I don't want any of you to walk out of here and just pick up their phone and delete every app off of their phone. That is not what this is intended to do. Yes, we have to talk about some horrible things, but may that be a motivation for conversation instead of condemnation for these things that you got to accept. They love some of this stuff, right? You may not understand why. You may not understand why they can watch 6 straight hours of YouTube. Just accept it, right? Get into their world and understand their world. So this testimony is going to talk about some dark and nasty things about the internet, because that's why we're trying to convince members of Congress that laws that are 20 and 25 years old, that were written back in the late 90s to try to help protect our kids, no longer work. They no longer work. They could not have conceived of the digital risk that exists today. So I just want you to listen to this through that lens, and then we'll jump back in and get into things. So go ahead.
Good morning, Chairman Graham, Senator Blumenthal, members of the committee. Thank you so much for allowing all of us this opportunity to speak today. I cannot think of a more noble cause for all of us to be spending our time on than the safety and protection of our children. I began Protect Young Eyes 5 years ago because the internet is complex, and even diligent parents are overwhelmed by the digital choices their children are facing. Through thousands of hours of research, hundreds of presentations at schools around the country, and dozens of articles examining digital trends, we have witnessed both the wonderful potential and the troubling and pervasive darkness that exists in the pockets of millions of young people today. I'm certain that in the course of today's discussion, we will hear difficult stories. I wish they were uncommon. In March 2019, CNN reported that Instagram was the leading social media platform for child grooming by sexual predators. Our own test accounts quickly discovered that young people, particularly young girls, can be hunted like prey. We started an Instagram account with 2 photos and tried to mimic the behavior of an average teen girl. We posted 2 selfies with 3 hashtags each, searched a few hashtags, and liked a few photos. Within a week, we had dozens of men sending us images of their genitals, telling us they were horny, and sending us hardcore pornography through direct messages. Even after we told all of them that we were only 12, they were relentless. A recent poll of 2,000 teens found that nearly 75% of them had received pornographic direct messages from strangers on Instagram, even if they had a private account. But you won't find any warnings in the App Store descriptions for Instagram that mention anything about sexual predators, direct message risks, sex trafficking, or hardcore pornography. Instagram's defaults are not set for child safety or data privacy, even though Instagram is rated 12+ by Apple and 13+ by Google. At Protect Young Eyes, we've also seen firsthand the predatory symbiotic relationship that exists between Instagram and Snapchat, both used by 75% of teens today. Many Instagram predators quickly shuttle kids over to Snapchat, where evidence disappears. For example, one relentless pedophile on Instagram who calls himself Daddy invites young girls to join him in Snapchat with Instagram posts like 12+-year-old slave girls, obedient whores only, or hit me up on Snap to be Daddy's naughty girl. Snapchat is where explicit content on Pornhub lives just seconds away from every user through backdoors within the app. The app knowingly allows a well-documented list of porn performers to make thousands of dollars daily through their premium Snap accounts. Snapchat is where harmless-looking face filters can encourage kids to share their location on Snap Map. It's the app that gave a Coors beer ad to 13-year-olds, even though they tout age gating. It's the app where every kid, regardless of age, has access to the Discover News section, where they are taught how to engage in risky sexual behaviors such as hookup, group, anal, or torture sex, how to sell drugs, and how to hide internet activity from parents using incognito mode. But again, you won't find anything in Snapchat's App Store descriptions that warn parents about premium Snapchat accounts, predator risks of using Snap Maps, or the hyper-sexualized content in Discover News. Snapchat is rated 12 plus by Apple and 13 plus by Google. Tech companies will tell us that ratings are already in place. However, ratings are not uniform, lack transparency, and there's little accountability for inaccurate ratings. For example, Twitter was rated 4 plus for a decade, even though hardcore porn and prostitution was everywhere. It is still breaking Apple and Google's no porn policy, but only claims infrequent or mild sexual content in the app description. Netflix is rated 4 plus in Apple's App Store, but teen in Google Play. VPNs, which allow teens to circumvent parental controls, are rated 4 plus. Most social media platforms are rated 12 plus by Apple, even though COPPA restricts use by children until age 13. Obviously, the current app ratings process is broken. Tech companies will tell us that protecting kids is a parent's responsibility. However, this position ignores the ubiquitous nature of the internet. Even if I do everything right to protect my own 14-year-old daughter, with almost 90% of teens owning a smart device, a simple ride on the bus or a visit to a friend's house can expose her to life-altering content. Never before in human history have young people had the ability to so radically change the trajectory of each other's lives so quickly. Tech companies will tell us that safeguards are already in place, but it currently takes over 30 steps to properly set up parental controls on an iPhone. We need to simplify this process to help more parents protect their children. For example, better age-based defaults would instantly and easily protect millions of kids. The addition of easy controls over school and bedtime could shut off distracting apps during these very critical times. Tech companies will tell us that regulating apps is too big of a job. It can't be done. However, video games are already successfully doing it, and the ESRB shows us a path that could be applied by reasonable individuals to apps. In fact, it was Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook who recently said, "I believe we need more effective role for governments and regulators." And we agree. Our hope is to create safer digital places for young people. Two simple solutions could change everything. First, create a uniform, independent, and accountable rating system for apps. And second, enact better defaults based on the age provided during device and app setup. Let's fix this for the kids. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
So we do this so that our young people are living and thriving in an environment that is not doing more damage to them than good. I truly believe that there are many positive and God-honoring ways in which we can teach our young people how to use technology. But it's not easy. Let's just recognize that right away. I don't stand in front of you, Dave doesn't stand in front of you as somebody who knows all the answers, and that if you would just do A, B, and C, and D, you will automatically have a son or a daughter who honors God with every digital click. I wish it were that simple. But there is a cocktail, sort of a list of things, again, that we just need to do them frequently enough. And I do think that often leads to success. So I want to introduce you to my family that you see up on the screen here in just a moment. And Dave will do the same. This is the photo that I like to say where 83.3% of the McKennas are pleased about the fact that this photo is being taken. This was on Easter Sunday this past year, and my son Grant is not pleased with the risen Lord. He would rather that he maybe just stayed in the tomb. I don't know. But what you have here, so Andrea and I, this month on November 20th, it's our golden 20 years on the 20th that we're happy to celebrate this month, which is great. And then Lauren is my freshman. Lord, say it ain't so. I've got a high schooler. We're down in Caledonia, so she's at Caledonia High. And then I've got twins, Cole and Grant, who are, believe it or not, the two that are on the right. Cole, my 9-year-old, and his fraternal twin who was born with Down syndrome, Grant. I didn't even know that was possible until those are two eggs that we got, right? So imagine our surprise. We knew we were having twins. Andrea was massive. We knew there were 2 humans inside of her. We just had no idea how radically different genetically they were going to be. And so they are 9, and then Blake came 19, very short, sleepless, surprising months later. So by background, I'm a CPA, and I married a CPA. Andrea now stays at home full time, but we're accountants, left brain, spreadsheet, analytics by nature. That was never on a spreadsheet. Like, having 3 boys under 2 was never on any Excel spreadsheet. I wouldn't say I don't recommend it. It's fun. I just don't remember any of it. Like, people could ask me about 2010 and 2011, and even though I was awake for most of it, I have zero memory of those years. And so I show you this, and you'll get to see Dave's family here next, because, friends, I am stumbling and bumbling through this too. I don't have all the answers. I try things. I mean, my poor kids. You don't want to be the 14-year-old that's growing up in the house where your dad is the leader of an internet safety organization. She can't control that, and she takes it with a smile. She's a great kid. But friends, I'm trying stuff, and some of it works and some of it doesn't. So I'm right there in the trenches with you. I'm right there on days where my kids just don't want to listen. I'm right there on the days where Blake just is so hooked on Mario Kart or Super Smash Brothers that I want to smash the Switch. Like, I'm in there with you, okay? So I want you to hear that very clearly. So, Dave?
Yeah, and just to make Luke feel worse, my name's Dave Thompson, not Thomas. That's the Wendy's guy. Close, but not quite. Hey, this is my beautiful wife, Brittany. I don't know how I deserve her. She's absolutely amazing. She actually is a teacher, and she was literally talking about how awful this week has been leading up to Halloween. Up there on the top right, that is my daughter, Amelia. She just turned 4 in October. And then that is my son, Finnegan, who is a year and a half. I tried to get all of us take a picture together type photo. However, they weren't having it. I'm having flashbacks to NAMM as we speak, but it was a great time. So I just took like kind of 3 pictures and threw it together. The last picture we actually have of all of us together that looked halfway decent was Christmas of last year, and they've changed. No, they are wonderful. And again, in the same way, I don't have teenagers. So I haven't experienced raising teenagers in this media, kind of driven world. However, even at the age of 4, my daughter already has connected with technology, right, and raising them. But I have 8 years of student ministry experience behind me where I have been able to walk through this with teenagers for the past 8 years. And so just kind of seeing what they're going through is kind of where I come to the table.
And so our charge then is what we see here in Proverbs 22:6, which still applies today, right? Direct your children onto the right path, and when they are older, they will not leave it. And I believe this is true. Again, you're going to see some things that are going to cause you to look in the mirror a little bit when it comes to raising people, young people who learn how to use technology well. It's so easy for us as parents to point a lot of fingers at them, and we don't understand it, and we blame a lot of things on them. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of the things that we're doing with technology that are communicating a lot of very subtle things about how they use technology. And so we need to be really cognizant of those things. I'm going to call a few of those things out. And so I just want to introduce you a little bit to who we are if you're not familiar with us as a resource. And Luke referred to the website earlier. We do a lot of things with churches and schools all over the country. During 2018, we did 293 presentations all over the country. And so far this year, we're almost to that number already here in 2019. So it's been great. We have a team of 6 presenters now that Dave is a part of the team, and others who help with social media and content and others, so that Because when I was in the position at Cornerstone before Dave leading middle schoolers, the reason Protect Young Eyes exists is because if you can imagine a time when Instagram was new and Snapchat had just sort of been released, I had a lot of parents who were coming to me during 2009 to 2016 asking the same questions. And so, because I have a background in consulting and I like to fix problems, I said instead of answering the same questions over and over again, we built a website. And we put all the best information there. And so what you see up on the screen, if you've never been there, is we do whatever we can every single week to go and look for what is trending and put it in one place. Now, we may point you in other directions, but we want to take care of the two primary obstacles that I hear from parents, which is I don't know where to go and I don't have time to find out, right? And it's hard for us. We have I have a woman who specifically is a researcher on digital trends, and we struggle to stay up with what's trending in the digital age. But we want to bear some of that burden, a lot of that burden for you. So whether it's the latest apps, whether it's the parental controls and knowing what to do on Family Link with Android or on your Kindle or Chromebook, all of those things, or diving in deep into research to understand the dark web or all of those sort of topics, we want to do that for you. And there's a number of ways that you can stay in touch on an ongoing basis. Yes, come to the free website whenever you want, but we do a lot through social media. And starting to do more and more just even this week with some additional staffing to do more through social media. But then if you're like me, Gen X, give me some old school email, right? We have a free weekly newsletter. If you want to subscribe to that, and pulling out your phone right now does not offend me in the least, but you just simply text the word protect to the number 66866, and that'll automatically get you into our newsletter. Just out of curiosity, because it just always blows my mind that I can be in random places in a random state and people are already getting our newsletter. That's sort of the nature of the internet. How many of you already received the Protect Young Eyes newsletter? Are there any in here? Okay, good, a decent handful, thank you. So that's free, and that comes out every Wednesday or Thursday-ish, just depending on what's going on, where a lot of what we're updating on the website then shows up then in that newsletter, okay? So, all right. As further evidence of the fact that I don't have it all figured out, I'm sometimes reminded that when it comes to things happening through different devices that I can't control it all, right? I refer to that in my testimony. There's this ubiquity of the internet, which means that it's really hard to control all of the digital influences that are impacting our kids today. Anybody else felt that, right? That they go to a friend's house and boom, there's the internet, right? They're riding the bus and boom, there's the internet, right? They're at school all day, boom, it feels like screens sometimes all day long. It's everywhere. And so when my son Blake was in kindergarten, one of the things that they did every day in kindergarten was they wrote in their kindergarten journals. Now, being a kindergarten teacher already puts you in a pretty special place. God love you if you're a kindergarten teacher. But being a kindergarten teacher who gets to read kindergarten journals must be one of the most entertaining jobs on earth. And so every single day, Blake was writing in his journal. And so we went to his conferences, and his teacher, she showed us a sample of Blake's writing. And in that moment, it was square right there in front of me how little control I have on all of the media that is influencing my son. So this is what he said. You'll see it up on the screen. Now, for a 5-year-old, that's pretty decent handwriting, isn't it? Like, I don't have middle schoolers who write that well, but this is what he said. He said, yesterday I watched Duck Dynasty. The people were doing karate. The people were doing boxing. The kids were punching and kicking Willie in the nuts. It was rock and roll. Like, what do you do with that? Like, I typically don't struggle with what to say or what to do next, but like in that moment, I had no idea how to parent this kid. In my dad gut, I'm like, I think I'm supposed to punish him, but I kind of wanted to give him a high five. Like that was really funny. And I looked at Andrea. I said, of course I don't want him, writing down, punching and kicking Willie in the stuff. But I said, what 5-year-old writes, it was rock and roll? Like that was the part that just blew my mind. I'm like, when I'm not home, is that a common phrase? Like, is that how we describe, dinner or lunch or sandwiches or whatever? Like, right? And so right then and there, I was presented with direct evidence that I can't control it all. Right, friends? You're going to hear that theme from us over and over again, is you cannot control it all. You have to look your young people, not a suggestion. You must look all of the young people that you care for in the eyes and talk to them about all of the awkward things that nobody talked to you about when you were growing up. Because if you don't, preach it, brother, if you don't, then YouTube will. What I used to say was, if you don't, then Dr. Google will. But old people Google stuff, teens YouTube stuff, young people YouTube stuff. It is the most popular platform used by young people today. It's not Snapchat, it's not Instagram, it is YouTube. They want to watch it, right? But friends, I want you to be the default for their big digital questions. That only happens if they trust you first. And that trust is not built in silence. That trust is built through sometimes awkward, but authentic, loving, persistent, and consistent conversations with your kids. And so I'm going to kind of tell you the end of the story at the beginning, because I want to frame everything that we say with some really key words that you're going to see up on the screen. And these aren't in your notes, but if you find them helpful, I encourage you to write them down. On the screen, you're going to see 5 words that I want to embody the relational part of you building trust with your kids. I believe that there is a constant bank that has a balance in it. I call it the digital trust bank. And as a parent or a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle, are you putting deposits in that bank, or are you withdrawing from that bank based on the things that you're doing? I believe that the 5 things up on the screen create deposits in the digital trust bank of the young people that you care for. Number 1, curiosity. I want you to be overly curious about the things that they do. Not condemning, not shameful, not shaking a finger at them, not, I don't get it. No, sit down and ask them some what if or, oh, that's interesting, tell me more kind of questions, right? Be curious. Then the second one up there, conversation. I've already banged that drum a little bit, and we're going to just keep pounding that drum, right? Talking to them and look them in the eye conversations. Friends, I had one talk from my mom and dad, Nancy and Bill McKenna. If they were here, I'd say the same thing. I got one talk, and it was one that I left more confused than when it started, okay? Like, it was awkward. It was weird. There's no excuse for one talk anymore. There's no such thing as the talk, just consistent, persistent talks these days, all right? Co-play. Accept it. They love video games. Play them with them. You want to learn about your son or your daughter? Play video games with them. You want to know how they emotionally respond to certain situations? Play video games with them. You want to know whether or not they're competitive? Play video games with them. One of my favorite times of night is getting crushed for 25 minutes in Super Smash Brothers by my 8 and my 9-year-old. They kill me. But man, we love that time together, okay? Now, I don't know you and I don't know your kids. If you've got kids who have an addictive nature that you know that's just not good for them, great. Set that one aside a little bit. But by and large, we need to be doing more with them. And there's science behind this. The American Pediatric Association, the World Health Organization, there's others that would say that's a huge determinant in whether or not your kids trust you when it comes to digital questions. The 4th one up there is caring control. Not just parental control. Parental control is a power struggle. It's, I am exerting my will on you. Caring control is based on what I know about you, based on your age. I'm going to exert an appropriate level of control, not because I don't trust you. It's because when you get online, there's 100 million people staring in the front window of our house, and I don't trust them. I think there's a difference there. I think the phrasing matters. And then the last one up there that disappeared, the last one up there is copy me. Right? Copy me. Ask yourself, do you want them using their technology exactly like you? It's a big question, isn't it? Now, the other side of that looks different. It looks like the ones that you see up on the screen there that I think are easier at times. They're sometimes our nature, right? Whether it's shame or silence, doing things separately, spying on them. I've always parents asking me about certain spyware. I'm like, listen, if you got a spy in your kid, that either means they're not ready and shouldn't have it, or you don't know how to parent them. I've only ever recommended spying on a teenager twice in 4 years of doing this because of illegal activity. Spying is not a way to parent your kid. All that does is take withdrawals out of that digital trust bank. And then secrets. Again, do we, as adults, have any digital secrets? I would contend that whether you are 14 or 40, there is no such thing as a good digital secret. Is our use of technology worth them copying it, right? And so you're going to see this sort of dynamic. You're going to see these words sort of play out over and over again in how we describe things, and they're really important. And, with these things often come a lot of questions. Parents often have a lot of questions. Okay, Chris, okay, Dave, show me how to do some of this stuff. What does that look like? So we often get a certain string of questions. And the first question is this one. And Dave, I'm going to let you tackle it.
Yeah, so let's just, come out with an easy one. What is the right age to talk about pornography with my kid, right? Honestly, actually, I don't know if I can really hear up here, but just throw out some ages. What do you think the answer is? 8? 5? Okay. When they start asking about it? Often, we kind of have a couple routes into how to answer that. It's, I'm going to talk to them about it whenever I'm ready to talk about it, right? Let's be real, as parents, that's uncomfortable. I don't know if I really want to, so I'm going to wait till I'm ready. But what we found is if you wait till you're ready, then it's way too late, right? One answer was wait until they ask about it. Well, if they're asking about it, then they've already heard about it, right? And so now we're kind of being more reactive rather than proactive. Truth is, we talk about pornography with all age groups that we talk about. However, we don't necessarily use the word pornography until grade 7. What we've come to find out is that we don't want to introduce content to kids. We do want to absolutely introduce concepts or discuss concepts. Right? So we talk about good or bad pictures. We talk about that kind of thing. And so we wrote about this, right? Here's a blog, how to talk to your 5-year-old about pornography. And again, this is a free resource to you. You can go to our website. You can actually see this.
Clarify one thing real quick on that in terms of that age. Our presentations when we are speaking at schools, we've sort of made it our rule that unless we've been given permission by the principal, we don't say the word, as you heard Dave say, pornography to grades under 7, because we can't assume that you have or haven't had the conversation. That's our thing. Now, we fully believe that every single 5th grader should already know the word, right? We just have to draw a more conservative line as an organization. But if I were to say to you, what's the right age yet? You've got to be doing it a lot sooner than that. We just know that at a school, when we have a gymnasium full of 5th and 6th graders, we don't want to be the first ones to say it, because the last thing that we want is a bunch of 5th and 6th graders running home and saying, hey, we had a guy come in and talk about internet safety today. What's pornography, right? But we do want to encourage you to have that conversation a lot sooner than you're probably ready for, right? So that's where a blog post like that can really help. So I just wanted to clarify what that grade thing meant, because we have to draw a line just so that we're not creating a lot of unnecessary drama for principals and for youth directors. But gosh, we really want you having that conversation early and often.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is kind of one of those scriptures here. It says, turn my eyes from worthless things, right? And give me life through your word. We want to catch them before we get there. If we want to raise up kids in a way that we don't have to have them recover from their childhood, we want to get them early and turn their eyes away from worthless things. Which is why one of our number one things that come up is, how do you block porn on any device for free? Right? And again, we want to write about that. We want to resource this with you. We have thousands and thousands of hours of research that we've put into our website. And of course, we have about 90 minutes with you up here, so we can't really just unload everything. But every device is a little different. And please go to our website and check into some of that.
And so how you can apply some of this practically, there's the technical side, which is what you're going to get in a blog post like this one, where through a tool called Clean DNS, which is one of the more technical things that we're going to cover in our talks. We pride ourselves on giving a lot of practical advice that even non-techie individuals can go home and feel confident implementing. This is likely one of the more technical things, But if I could describe it, it's as simple as this. Whether you realize it or not, every single time you type something into a search engine on the internet, that search engine is translating your words into numbers. Everything on the internet is numbers. And those numbers go to servers to try to find numerical answers, and then those servers translate it back into words, right? Clean DNS simply means that even if you're looking for inappropriate things, it will direct your search only to clean digital phone books to find the answers. And there's ways that you can do that, free and easy. OpenDNS is a service that some families are familiar with. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of OpenDNS, right? That's what that is. It's essentially directing your traffic to places where you can't even get to it. Clean browsing is another one, so check that out. But at a practical level, when Dave said, we want you maybe all the way down to 5-year-olds having this conversation, it can look as simple as the conversation that I had with my son Blake. We were in the kitchen, and I said, hey, Blake, you love using the computer, right? He's like, yeah, Dad, I love using the computer. I'm like, good. Blake, you know what your private parts are, don't you? And he's like, well, yeah. He's a 5-year-old boy. Of course he does. If you've raised 5-year-old boys, you know what I'm talking about. Dude, it's not a toy. Put it, anyway. All right. Sorry, TMI. But I said, Blake, he's like, yeah, Dad, I know my private parts. I'm like, good. Dude, if you are ever using the computer, Mom's phone, Grandma's tablet, if you ever see someone else's private parts, you know that spot underneath the bathing suit, you know what I want you to do? And now he's like, what? What is Dad going to say next? I said 2 things. Put it down, tell someone. That's it, man. That's all I want you to do. Put it down, tell someone. Practice it. Put it down, tell someone, tell someone. Like we practiced that. He knew that phrasing, right? And I said, okay, great, good, you got that. Got it, good, thumbs up. Private parts, put it down, tell someone. Great. Blake, who are some someones that you could tell? If that ever happened, Mom and Dad aren't around, who are some someones that you could tell? And I made him make a list. Like, who are other people, right? So Lauren, older sister, right? Grandma McKenna, Aunt Susie. Good, these are the someones that you could tell. That was really important. Now, a word of advice. If this is a process that you decide to use with your son or your daughter, I highly recommend that you tell all of the people who have been listed on the someone list that they are on the someone list. This is important, right? Because the last thing that I want to have happen is when Blake is at Grandma's house watching Netflix on the iPad, Grandma, private parts on the iPad, and Grandma freaking out, right? Like, Grandma's got to know the process. Grandma's got to know the words. Now, I joke about that a little bit, but there's a really important psychological and sort of heart reason for that. And it's this. Blake loves Grandma McKenna. Blake doesn't want to make Grandma McKenna upset. And if by doing the right thing, exactly what Dad told me to do, it causes Grandma McKenna to be upset, that creates a very confusing dialogue inside of Blake's head. Wait, Dad told me, and oh my gosh, I did the wrong thing. Now I feel shameful and I feel guilty. And guess what? If it happens again, I might not tell anybody. So that's why it's really important. This is why when we talk to teachers and we do a lot of professional development sessions with teachers, a very important thing that I say to teachers, I say is, are you ready for any and everything in a one-to-one program, whether it's Chromebooks or iPads, for any and everything that a little person might come up and show you they found on that computer? Because your reaction matters. They don't want to make you upset, but if you're upset and shameful and disappointed, they might not tell you the second time. And shame stinks for them too, right? And so, again, that's just a practical application for that. When Blake turned 6 and he started riding the bus from time to time, he was in the back of the car. I said, hey, Blake, you know what? Private parts on a computer, there's a word for that. The world calls that pornography. Repeat the word after me, pornography, pornography. I said, dude, if you ever hear a kid on the bus saying that word, you know what I want you to do? He's like, what? I said, I just want you to tell someone. He's like, all right, I already know how to do that. Like, that's a framework the dude already knew, right? It wasn't weird. It wasn't scary. Listen, the reason that kids are sometimes awkward and weird about talking about this topic is because you are. They learn that, right? The word doesn't make him curious. That's one of the fears that we have to push back against. And I'm spending a lot of time on this point because it's so critical. I'm like one of the few humans on earth that loves talking about pornography, okay? Like, it's just no big deal to me. In fact, everyone in the room, repeat after me, pornography. It is just a word, okay? And for the tens of thousands of parents that we've spoken to, all of them have a note-taking guide just like the one you do. All of them have my phone number. All of them know how to get a hold of me. This is what has never happened in 4 years of doing this presentation. I've never had a parent call me and say, you know what, Chris? Thank you so much for your talk. I appreciated your advice. My husband and I did exactly what you had suggested. We went home and we had this loving conversation with our son or daughter about what pornography is, what it isn't, why God's plans for love and intimacy are so much better. Thanks a lot. Now they're a porn addict. Right? That's never happened. But sometimes we believe that lie that by talking about it, we're going to create this unnatural curiosity. Friends, I am guessing that if that would have happened just one time, I would have gotten a phone call. You don't mess with Mama Bear. Okay? Give them power. Give them a tool. Give them a word. Give them knowledge. Say it. Okay? It's so important. So like if walking out of here after this, you've got any lingering questions about how to do this, and Luke's going to have some drawings later for some resources that can help, do not hesitate to ask us. This is one of those topics that we've really got to nail. So.
Yeah, so just a few kind of digital stats here, just to kind of get us started. 27%. 27%. That is the percent of all video content, according to a study, that is on the internet that is considered explicit. Now, just for a moment, imagine for a second we have this amazing, internet connected, very high quality camera right there that just happens to make phone calls. Now, we often put these devices into kids' hands. Now, just think about that device kind of being like a coffee table. You take a coffee table and you have, let's just say there's like a Sesame Street book and maybe like a, how to barbecue book, right, guys? Let's be real, right? Then you have another coffee table book. I don't know what that is. And then the fourth one is a Playboy. And then we just hope that our kid doesn't pick up the Playboy. That's kind of what we have as it comes to the internet, right? Which is why we're seeing a rise in this peer-on-peer sexual abuse. And what a Kansas City Children's Hospital nurse is pointing to, what they found is that time and time again, there was porn that was involved. Young children coming across something on the internet that they just simply weren't ready to handle yet. And what we're finding actually is that it's not like a bad kid out there trying to find something bad. It's a good kid using a device that has some bad features, some bad functions. And again, they just happen to come across something. And what we're seeing is this sexual abuse isn't necessarily from that, that family member that's older. We're seeing a rise in sexual abuse from peers, other 8-year-olds, other 9-year-olds, other 12-year-olds. And it's rising. And so we have to wonder, am I having the right conversations with the right kids? Right? Because kids are different. Man, my daughter, Amelia, she is just like, she is leader through and through. Me and my wife, me and her mother, we are both like natural born leaders. Teachers loved to hate me whenever I was growing up. I was like a student that got really good grades, but man, I was a horrible student. Like I was just the worst, and it's because I was a natural leader. My daughter is punishment for my behavior. Honestly, I'm very thankful for it. I know that like when she becomes a teenager and she gets up into the world, she's such a strong individual that I don't think any boy's going to push her around. And so I'm very thankful. But that's who Amelia is. Now Finnegan, who is a year and a half, he is a follower through and through. Like he is just the exact opposite. They're very, very different. Amelia is going to do the wrong thing, and she's going to do it right there in front of you, because to her, She's doing the wrong thing because she thinks it's okay and right. She doesn't understand why it's wrong, and so she's just going to do it right in front of you. Finnegan, on the other hand, he does everything secretively because he knows it's wrong, because he knows that we as the authority have told him it's wrong, but he's going to do it because he wants to anyway. So I walked into the kitchen the other day, and he had those veggie straws. You guys, kids eat veggie straws, you guys? Yeah. And so he was in there. We just kept hearing something like chomping on the veggie straws. I'm like, dude, this dude is eating so loud. And I walk in there, and he's literally feeding the veggie straws to the cat. And he's just sitting there feeding them, and then he looked up at me, and he saw me, and he dropped his veggie straws and took off running like he was in trouble. But to him, he's secretive, right? And so with Amelia, I know what she's going through and what she's doing because she's right there in front and obvious about it. With Finnegan, I know that he's a little bit secretive, right? Are we having the right conversations with the right kids? 81,055. That's the number of YouTube videos that were viewed in the time it took me to read the number 81,055. In fact, this is actually an updated number. Just the last time that we talked about this, it was 79,800 something, and so just in this little bit of time, we've seen that level of increase. YouTube is the number one search engine today, if I remember correctly, which is owned by yesterday's number one search engine, which is Google. And because kids, like he said, they go to YouTube, they do not go to Google.
If I could chime in for a minute on YouTube, YouTube is one of these love-hate relationships. Anybody have that sort of relationship with YouTube? You love the hilarious cat videos and Dude Perfect and all these things, but you're always just one step away from the sludge. And we talk all the time with young kids, and I don't like having kids raise their hands and put it on the spot with things, but I'll have a room full of fourth graders like I did last week in Chicago. And I'll just say, hey guys, listen, I want you to just kind of nod your heads. While you're doing work or just watching videos or looking for stuff, is it kind of easy to run into stuff that you probably shouldn't see on YouTube? And they all kind of go, yep. Every single time. Through what's suggested on the side, through the autoplay. So I just want to make sure you're asking yourself this question: is YouTube under control in your house? Right? This is the blog post that you just saw up there, that if you go to ProtectYoungEyes.com and search for YouTube, you're going to want to find out. I swear nobody at Google has children. Every single thing that Google does, including the properties that it owns. Oh, and by the way, they just bought Fitbit today for $2.1 billion. Everything that Google owns and does makes my life more difficult as a parent, which kind of stinks because I love my Fitbit, right? Ask yourself, is YouTube under control in your house? It is the number one destination for teens. Overall, it's the number 2 search engine for adults, number 1 for teens, okay? So that's why we spend a lot of time talking about that one and making sure that you know how to get it under control. And parents will sometimes ask us about YouTube Kids. Anybody have kids who love YouTube Kids? Raise your hand, a few of you, right? The question I always get is, well, what about YouTube Kids? And my answer is this: if it has YouTube in the title, I don't trust it. I have too much history to prove that they put engagement instead of protection. Like, they just don't have enough history yet. So, yes, YouTube Kids is okay. Yes, it's better. You can read all about it on the website. But if it has YouTube in the title or it's touched at all by Google, our stance is always verify before trust. Now, to YouTube Kids' credit, they recently updated some of their parental controls. You can now create a whitelist of videos that you have selected for them to watch, and those are the only ones that they can watch. Right? So they can watch just those 10 videos about some kids unwrapping toys or candy, mind-numbing. Anybody seen these? Right? You know what I'm talking about? You're just like, why is it fun watching somebody else open stuff you can't have? I don't know why, but they love it. Okay?
Way too much, to be honest.
Way too much, yeah.
Yeah, so are YouTube and YouTube Kids under control in your home? Right? These are the questions we want you to ask. The funny thing, kids are not trying to get into trouble. They're just kind of wandering, aimlessly. Like, if I could be perfectly honest, growing up, we lived in a place that was kind of like a geographical oddity. It was kind of 20 minutes from everywhere. And so we had 3 different Walmarts within a 20-minute drive, and we almost always went to this one specific Walmart. And this Walmart, when you went in, we had the guys' restroom on the right and the girls' restroom on the left. and we almost always went there. However, there was one time that we actually had to go to this Walmart over here, and you get out, and I go inside, and I have to use the restroom, and so I just walked into the restroom on the right. I opened the door, and there are 3 female cops standing there looking like they are going to murder me. No, I didn't know what to do. I was 12 years old. I just kind of slowly walked backwards, shut the door. I'm sure I had a face of horror, It was there. We're wandering aimlessly. They're not trying to get in trouble. They're not trying to find things. But if we don't limit it, if we don't direct them, we're going to allow them to walk right into something. So is it under my control? 20%. 20% represents the number or the percentage of young girls aged 12 to 17 who have reported a significant depressive episode in the past year, which is up from previous years, from 2007, the year the iPhone came out, which was 4%. There's been an increase from 4 to 20% since 2007. And what is the difference? The difference is we now have social media right in the palm of our hand everywhere we go, right? We've allowed the value of where a girl finds her value, we've allowed society to change it from being the image bearer of God, and they've degraded it down to the point where it's ultimately just what can they provide sexually. That's what society tells our young girls where their value comes from. Now, if you put social media into their hand, where the whole system is based on how many likes, how many followers, how many, etc. do you get, how many shares, comments, then we're just increasing, limiting where their value ultimately is found and allowing them to get their identity in something that's small and insignificant. And so if I could speak to the dads for a moment. Dads, you need to make sure that your girls know that that is not where their value comes from. I don't know what it is about a father over a mother, but a father can speak to their daughter in such a way that it impacts them. And so I ask you, where do you find value in the women around you? Where are you demonstrating that value is found greater than what they can provide sexually? How are you communicating that to your daughters? Are you communicating that to your daughters? Mothers, if I could talk to you for a second. Everything that you say about yourself, they hear. Every time you talk bad about yourself, they hear it. And they think that that's ultimately where my focus needs to be too. As I grow up, I need to be focused on how my hair looks and how I look and whether or not I have pimples on my face. They hear it. So dads, tell your wives that they are beautiful, but they don't have to be known for their beauty. Dads, tell your daughters that they're beautiful, but they don't have to be known for their beauty. There's so much more than that. They bear the image of God. Some digital trends of 2019 to 2020 here. First, I just want to kind of jump into the ubiquity of technology means that there's no such thing as tech-free. Everyone is going to come in contact with technology. The thought of, hey, let's move out into the wilderness, let's detach from technology, let's live off of the land, use solar panels, that sounds great. That's kind of the only way that you could really get away from technology. You cannot control all of the digital risk impacting your kids. Leave the ignorance of the land of if. Your child will see or do something on a digital device that you don't want them to. Are you ready for all of the digital whens? And just to kind of show how this works, 90% of all teens are impacted or interact with Snapchat on a daily basis. 90% of all teens. And I know we're going to talk about Snapchat, and you're going to hear that we really hate on Snapchat a lot, and I just want you to know why. They have earned every bit of our scrutiny. As much as Google is ran by people who don't have kids, I think Snapchat is just about in the same world. make a list of every horrible thing you hope never happens to your kid on the internet. Then in an age-appropriate way, talk to them about those things. Right? We need to leave the land of if, and we need to think about when are these things going to actually rise? When are we actually going to have to worry about this and start dealing with it now?
And friends, this isn't one that's just like on the screen. Like, I literally want you to do this. Like, write down everything that you hope never happens to your kids online. Every interaction, every type of content, whatever are the things that keep you up at night when you think about your precious children and technology, make a list. And then through some resource, through a friend, through talking to us, find a way to talk to them about all of that stuff in an age-appropriate way before they're asking about it, before they're showing it by somebody else. Like, seriously, I truly, truly want you to try to do this, okay? That leads right into another question that I think when it comes to ubiquity is a really important one to tackle.
So what is the right age to give my kids social media? Right? COPA tells us 13, yep. Right? Society ultimately tells you whenever you want. That's what culture says. You get it whenever you want it. What's funny is kids actually, the mechanism that allows kids who are under the age of 13 to get social media, they're so naive that they don't realize that what allows an 8-year-old to say that they're a 13-year-old is the same mechanism that allows me to say that I'm a 13-year-old girl as well. And so they think, hey, I can lie about it and get into this, but they don't realize that, hey, so can I. I can look like the person that you're looking for too. So when is the right age? And with us, we actually don't think that it's really age is kind of the most important or most significant thing that qualifies whether or not a kid should have social media. We think it's about the 4th or 5th kind of, tier down. Really, we kind of bring it down to a few questions. One, we want to know, can you tell me 3 awesome facts about yourself? Can you tell me 3 awesome facts about yourself? We ask our kids, can you tell me 3 things about you that are awesome and that you love about yourself? Because if you can't tell us something amazing about yourself, then you're getting social media for the wrong reason. You're hoping that maybe if I do this and if I get the right amount of this and if I get the right amount of that then I will have something amazing and awesome about myself. Right? Another thing that we ask is, because we're looking kind of at a heart condition here, we ask them, can your kid have a conversation with an adult and look them in the eye? Right? Because you're going to come in contact with adults, you're going to come in contact with people, and if you're not ready to actually be able to talk to them, then you don't need to be on social media in that way.
Can I give a real practical example with that one? Because
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
That one's really key, especially if you have young kids. You can start this well before they need social media, right? That I want my kids to have a relational template that's based on human-to-human interaction long before they have screen-to-screen interaction with other people. So these are really simple things that we can do. Like, I'll be at church talking with another adult, and if my sons walk up to me, I'll interrupt that conversation and make them introduce themselves and shake the hand of the person that I'm talking to. Now, this is also a really sneaky way to get the name of the person if you've forgotten it, because that's like an old pastor trick, right, where your kid will introduce themselves, like, oh, yeah, Scott, right, yeah, right. But I want my sons and my daughter to know how to kind of shake a hand, how to kind of look them in the eye. This is why we have them order their own food at restaurants. They've done this for a very young age, where we get the name of the waiter or the waitress, we introduce them to our kids, and they get to order their own food. Now listen, this means I have to concede a little bit on the things that they order, and I have to be okay with that. I introduced you to Grant earlier on. My son with Down syndrome, his major challenge is speech, and you have to kind of hang around with Grant for a little while to understand Grant. But I swear that he practices 2 words in his bedroom over and over and over again: root beer and French fries. Because every time we go out, that's what he has to order. And he's so proud of the fact that he can order it. But I want my boys and Lauren, I want them to be able to look that person in the eye and have a conversation with them. I don't want the relational template built on comments. I don't want the relational template that is void of facial expressions, that's void of context, to be based on text messages. I want them to understand some of those things first so they can apply that knowledge to those places that are void of some of those human-to-human things. So that's a simple way that we've tried to apply that. So
yeah, another one would be, do you trust to leave your child at home alone for 3 hours? Right? If you can trust that kid at home alone for 3 hours, if you can't, then you probably doesn't need to be in social media for more than 3 minutes alone. Digital trend number 2, big tech is failing to protect young people. Profits beat protection. Ultimately, what we're coming to realize is that technology, the people who have created this tech, they created it without feeling that they had any responsibility to what the technology creates. Right? And so what's happening is they've created technology that is ultimately addictive by design. It's addictive by design. They've created it so that we get a little bit of a dopamine response every time we see that notification go off, every time we check our phone, every time we get that vibrate. Literally, there's a thing called phantom vibration syndrome in people in their 20s and 30s because we so crave that little vibration going off in our pocket so that we can check our phone. It's so addictive to us that we feel it constantly all day, even whenever our phones aren't even in our pocket. And again, it's not that bad kids are making bad choices online. It's more often that good kids are using apps with bad features that they just aren't ready to handle. So here in a minute, we're going to watch this video with Sean Parker, one of the founding people of Facebook. Since then, he's actually left Facebook, and he travels around to actually talk a little bit more about things that we would love him to talk about. But as we watch this video, I want you to listen to what it is that he calls himself. So let's watch this.
Entrepreneur Sean Parker says he's not sure how much Facebook is benefiting society. Parker was the founding president of Facebook when the company started over a decade ago. He recently made some very jarring comments about social media exploiting the vulnerabilities in human psychology during a conversation with Axios. Here's what he had to say.
You know, if the thought process that went into building these applications, Facebook being the first of them to really understand it, and that thought process was all about how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible. And that means that we need to sort of give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while because someone liked or commented on a photo or a post or whatever. And that's going to get you to contribute more content, and that's going to get you, more likes and comments. I mean, it's a social validation feedback loop that it's like it's exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with, because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. And I think that we the inventors, creators, and it's me, it's Mark, it's the Kevin Systrom at Instagram, it's all of these people, understood this consciously, and we did it anyway.
All right, let me just close.
He said the hackers, like myself, he said we exploit vulnerabilities to waste as much time as we possibly can. That's the business that they're in, which is part of the reason why we want to promote something like this. It's a 7-day rule. We believe that before you give permission to your child to download an app, and yes, I said permission, you have the ability to give permission to your kids as to whether or not they download an app. We believe that it's best for you to download that app and have it on your phone for 7 days. And you create an account. In fact, don't just create an account for yourself. Create an account that looks like your 13-year-old son or your 15-year-old daughter. Create an account and experience it for 7 days. Do the things that a teenager would do in that app. Read about that app. Go on our website. Within a few days of an app launching, if it becomes significant, we have a review about it on our website. Read what people are saying. See what's happening. Do the research on it before you ever give permission to your kids to download it. Right? Any parents in here know what this symbol is? No? So this is for Roblox. Have you guys ever heard of that? Roblox. It's a popular game that kids love to play. It's a very innocent game. It's a wonderful game. It's creative in nature. It involves kind of this big open world, kind of sandbox type game where you can kind of go and do what you want to do, and it involves having the ability to talk to one another, and so you can get on there with your friends and actually talk to each other and play. But what we found is that anywhere where kids are, tricky people also are. And see, as I mentioned earlier, we don't use certain language with kids, but we don't use the word predator with our kids, but we use the word tricky people. Right? And tricky people are anywhere. In fact, what we see is that all apps with a chat feature will always have predatory activity. Roblox, the Fitbit app, all of them. Here's the digital law: wherever the kids are is also where the predators are. Tricky people are no longer people sitting in their vans, sitting outside of a playground saying, hey, do you want to come get some candy? Although I'm sure those are still there. They're now sitting in the comfort of their own home through anonymity, speaking to these kids. What we've also come to find is that these people are often very, very nice. They're the nicest people. Often, if you come across a tricky person, they're probably the nicest person that you've ever talked to. And our kids, as they get frustrated with us because we just don't understand them, right? Let's be real. We weren't teenagers at some point in time in life, but because we don't understand them, they go online and they talk about, I'm not getting this from my parents, I'm not getting supported, I can't do this, I can't do that. And what happens, they come across them and they say, hey, but I'll support you. I'll love you. I don't understand why your parents aren't letting you do that. Right? And all of a sudden they're very nice, they're very supportive, and they come across. And so does your son or daughter know how to walk away from a nice predator? Have we had the conversations to be able to help them know that they're out there and that they have permission to step away from it? We have to give our nice kids permission not to talk to nice people that they don't know online. In fact, my rule is if you don't know someone in person, then you have no right talking to them online. Do they have permission to walk away? Often why is it so hard for kids to walk away from a nice person? Well, really, we've kind of created this idea that if you do that, if you try to shut that down, then you're not being nice to them. And don't get me wrong, nice is great. We need to be nice, but we also need to be smart. And we are allowed to be smart and say, hey, I don't really know you, and so I'm going to walk away. Tricky people, the new stranger danger for the digital age. We used to identify strangers by what they looked like. Now we teach kids to identify strangers by what they talk like. Right?
And when it comes to predators, we often think that this is just a conversation for young kids. But it's not. Back in March of 2019, Instagram was labeled the leading social media platform for child grooming. If you're not familiar with that terminology, that's the process whereby individuals who have bad intent with young people will groom them towards a conversation, will groom them towards a specific goal through some of that interaction that Dave just went through by being nice to them, by being empathetic, and by listening to them. And so Instagram is a platform that, honestly, I love. Who has Instagram in the room? Raise your hand if you have Instagram. Right? Look at that. Wow, that's most all of us, right? It's a great platform. Instagram has very noble roots. Do you know the story behind Instagram? It was Kevin Systrom on vacation with his girlfriend at the time, who took a picture with her iPhone, wasn't happy with how it turned out. So the dude went back to the hotel, wrote some code over a modem, sent it back to someone else, and built this app. It's crazy, right? He sold it since. He got out while the getting was good before Zuckerberg took over. But anyway, it has a noble beginning. It's just that in the race for engagement, in the race for more and more people, in the race to beat Snapchat, it became just like Snapchat. and has all the features of Snapchat. And so when we saw this study came out, we're like, okay, well, let's test this. And so as you heard in my testimony, we created some test accounts. And we tried to mimic some of the behaviors and to show you some of the things. And friends, we can't show you everything because some of it, and trust me, I was a youth pastor for a long time. I've been exposed to a lot of sometimes weird, but sometimes really tragic situations. Nothing prepared me for the kinds of interactions that I experienced on our public, I'm a 12-year-old girl Instagram account. Right, so to give you some examples of some of the screenshots, these are some of the more tame examples to show you how, as Dave said earlier, it's not bad kids, it's sometimes bad features. The hashtag feature in Instagram creates unfortunate risk because like a drone, what hashtags allow is for people with bad intent to drop bad content into good places with a simple hashtag. Knowing that young people during certain times of year might search for images that are tagged with the hashtag kiss or beachwear, they can drop little tempting signals or things in there to try to get a kid's attention, a curious kid's attention. Like, what does this mean? 13 plus girls, oh, there's a Snap name. Now, since 75% of kids have Snapchat, I'll go type that in, right? This is an example of a predator who we have followed and reported, who's been kicked out of Instagram a number of times, but since you only need a fake email address in order to create a new Instagram account, he just pops up over and over and over again. We've been reporting him for 9 months to no avail. But this is how a bad feature can get good kids into trouble, right? Same thing about private accounts. How many of you knew that Instagram has the ability to create a private account? Raise your hand. Okay, some of you. Typically, that's a safety net that parents have. That, oh, great, I give my kid a private account, everything must be okay. One of the most egregious features in Instagram is the fact that I can still send a direct message to anybody who has a private account. And it's through this pathway that you see here, right? That I can click on the number of likes of some William Frankly Miller Bay. Man, you've got to have humility issues if you name yourself Bay, okay, right? But anyway, here are all the girls who have liked his stuff, and one of them is a private account, and you click on the 3 dots, and you can send this person a message, right? They've got to get rid of this feature like yesterday. If you have a private account, shouldn't it be private? Right, so when parents ask me about, well, what does it mean then to have a private account on social media? This is essentially what it means. Imagine for a minute that you're a young person, and in front of you have a hallway that's a mile long, okay? And there are thousands of doorways on either side of that hallway. Having a private account on social media, whether it's on Instagram or it's on TikTok, all that simply means is that the doors are all locked from the inside and that those people can't get out to get to you. But as somebody walking down the hallway, you can open whatever door you want. Right? Having a private account doesn't stop you from going to find bad stuff, right? And so we've got to just get to a position. This is one of the things that we're battling for so strongly in DC, is that the defaults, if Instagram knows based on the birthday that the person using the app is 13, certain features just shouldn't be available. Based on the defaults, it should be age appropriate. It's just one simple example. So we've written, if you want to learn more about some of the things that we discovered on Instagram, great. Now listen, here's what I don't want you to do. I've just told you a lot of really freaky, scary things about Instagram. Do not go home and delete Instagram off of your kid's phone. Go back to our keywords. I want you to be curious about Instagram. I want you to ask your son or daughter, has anybody ever sent you a direct message that kind of grossed you out? Or has that happened to a friend of yours? Like, how did that make you feel? Be curious. You will learn a ton about your child by just being curious, and you'll put some deposits in that digital trust bank. Does that make sense? Right? You know, as Dave said, we've had a lot of opinions about Snapchat. I had the chance to meet with Snapchat's global leadership team last month, and they're trying to do some good things. There's a lot of really fun features in Snapchat, right? The Snap Map can be fun or it cannot. Like, you got to make sure that you don't have that turned on so that people who you don't know or that you mildly know where you're located, right? The filters are hilarious. You should have seen my mom at Christmas time this past year. I remember showing her Snapchat, and we pulled up the ostrich face, and here's Grandma McKenna making the ostrich face on Snapchat. It was hilarious, right? Anybody ever play with the filters on Snapchat? Be honest. Anybody? Okay, good. All right. Yeah, old people can do this too. It's hilarious, right? There are some fun aspects to it. But friends, listen. Whether you're a teenager or an adult, if you are consistently in an application that tells you that the stuff that you do disappears, eventually you're going to make a bad decision. Especially if you have a brain with a prefrontal cortex that is only 10% developed. Wisdom is not in your vocabulary. Am I right? Like, again, I just believe that we at times, if your kid is making bad choices on Snapchat, that's not often your kid's fault. Neurologically, I don't think they're ready for some of the digital playgrounds that we put them in unless they've been highly trained, unless you're having great conversations with them, right? That's where we've got to tone back the judgment a little bit and go, listen, Snapchat wasn't made for 13-year-olds. Over time, if you think you can get away with something as a 40-year-old, eventually you'll try. Don't you think they will too? Right? So that's just amping up our education, amping up our empathy, amping up the fact that, eventually, if they use this long enough, they may make a mistake. But not all of them are doing horrible things, right? The filters are a blast. Let's be straight. Snapchat's history proves to us that they care nothing for the well-being of young people. It's an app founded on secrecy and sending inappropriate photos. Some kids just can't handle the risk. Parent, does your kid already have Snapchat? Great. Don't be passive. Know your kid, know the risks, and parent accordingly. Again, don't go home and rip it out of their hands. Ask them some really pointed, curious questions. And if you want to know more, we've written a lot about it. If you just type Snapchat into the search feature on our website, you'll find a lot of things. And so this second trend was all about kind of guarding the mind, right? That addictive by design instead of safety by design. Because the standard that we're called to, right, comes from Philippians 4:8, where St. Paul says, "And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise." Honestly, friends, for some kids, and this is why it's just so important to know your kids, for some kids, it is not possible for them to do that inside of those apps. They just don't know. They can't. Developmentally, they just can't. So going back to that other question, what's the right age? You got to know your kid. You got to study them and know them and be curious about them and understand that not all 13-year-olds are ready. Just because COPA says and Google says they're ready, some are just not ready. Some are, but I just tend to believe after 10 years of working with middle schoolers that there is a single-digit percentage of middle schoolers who are probably ready for social media. Let's be straight, middle school has enough drama without it, amen? They don't need that complexity built into it. So that's a lot. I'm going to pause and just ask you before we take a little break, and then to bring you back from the break, Luke is going to draw for some of those great resources for you. But just based on some of the things that Dave and I have said so far, are there any questions? Now, we're going to hang out afterwards. One of the nice things about doing a presentation kind of close to home is we don't have to rush out of here to, for travel reasons. We can just hang out and chat afterwards, and we'll be happy to do that. But are there any questions that you would like to ask based on what we've said so far? Then we'll let you take about a 3-minute stand-up. What a beautiful facility. Go walk around, then come back in. But anything right now? Oh, there. All right. Okay, we go. We'll go front first. First name, sir, and then speak up, and I'll repeat it back. Yeah. Hi, Ryan. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, the question from Ryan, because my kids love Dude Perfect too. If you've not seen them, they're actually Jesus-loving guys who are amazing at sports. They're really sweet. And the question is, in the YouTube taxonomy, a channel is a thing, right? A channel houses their videos, right? Just like on a TV channel, right? And he's wondering in YouTube Kids, can you more or less whitelist an entire channel like the Dude Perfect channel? Not to my knowledge. That you'd have to grab individual dude perfect videos and tag them as okay, but you couldn't at a channel level just say everything by Dude Perfect in YouTube Kids is appropriate for my kids. That I'm aware of. It's only on an individual video basis. Again, they don't have kids. That's why right? If they were thinking like Ryan, we'd have a YouTube Kids that was great for us, but they don't. So,
well, and even if a channel has consistently been great, we still would love for you to watch the video with your kid first anyway.
Yeah.
Right before you put it into a whitelist. So
yeah.
that's good. That co-play feature.
That co-play, yeah, number 3. True, right. It wouldn't send them outside of that channel, at least you would hope. Right. Well, I'm impressed. You even use the word algorithm there to kind of know what's going on inside of there. So Ryan, you've done your research. It's good. Good job. Awesome. What else? Yes, over there. I saw that one next. First name? Yes. Hi, Jen. Ooh, that's a good one. Right. Yeah. Wow. You're like, one topic at a time, please. Right. Yeah. So the question from Jen, good one, is like, is there a logical sequence? The sex talk versus pornography. I actually, nothing scientific behind this other than just Chris's opinion. I believe that it's actually easier to introduce the topic and definition around pornography than it is the sex talk, to be perfectly honest. So my boys got to talk about pornography years before they knew that, you mean babies come from mom and dad? Gross, right? But because I could just sort of definitionally, tangibly point to a screen and say, if you saw it there, like it was just a more tangible concept. And for whatever reason, with my kiddos, an easier one to start with. Now, maybe some of you, I'm guessing that there may be other answers that some of you might have to try to answer, Jen's question and other opinions there. But that's been my own experience on that one. That's less weird for them to wrap their heads around. Like, well, yeah, people get naked. I get naked. If there's a naked person here, instead of, okay, I just do that thing. But the concept of the other thing is like, really? What? Yeah, so that's just been my experience. Yes. Yeah, that's a great. So first name, Bruce. So Bruce said that, and I think this is true, to only talk about that pornography is bad and not at least alluding to the fact that, God believes that there's better ways to use our body, that he's saying that sometimes just starting off with a negative conversation sets them off sort of down only what's bad about sex and sexuality. And I think that's a great point. And that's good, Bruce, so thank you. That's good. Yes, hi. Hi, Aaron. So Aaron's question is, based on how much technology is being consumed in the school, what is the school doing in order to filter and prevent certain things? So all public schools are required by law, CIPA, the Children's Internet Protection Act, to have certain minimum standards in place to filter all internet access in that school. Otherwise, they lose certain federal funding. Okay? So my answer to you would be, I sure hope so. Now, I know that that's not always perfect. My answer to you would always be, and I say this to a lot of parents, is Not only do schools need to do more to be transparent about what is happening around these things, but we need to be more curious and demand more answers from schools and principals and administrators about what's going on to understand what technology consumption looks like for my kid during the 7 hours where I'm not controlling them. So I think there's both sides of that, but if that one's not happening, then we could probably step up a little bit more to ask some different questions. I also, when I'm not working for Protect Young Eyes, I'm the digital marketing manager for Covenant Eyes, if you have heard of that software solution, which I love. If you were to go to Covenant Eyes blog, you would find a blog post there that I wrote titled 5 Things You Should Ask Every Principal About Tech at Your Kid's School. That may be one that would be helpful to know what kind of questions to ask. 5 things to ask a principal. Like if you typed in that sort of keyword string, it should come up. If not, email me and I'll send it to you directly. But 5 things you should ask a principal about technology. That's at covenanteyes.com. Okay, cool. Now, during the break even, we'd be happy to stand up here and answer a few more questions. But I do want to make sure you get breaks. So stand up. 3 minutes. We'll call you back in. It'll be very obvious. And we'll do some drawings for prizes. So just take a quick break, all right? Thanks.
Well, as you guys are making your way back in, we know there's a lot of questions, and we'll have some time for those in a little bit. We're going to got a few resources that the crew has recommended for you guys, and as you're coming in, before we call out a few of those names, you can come grab these. One of the things that I thought that Chris drew out is how important relationships are. That the template for relationship building is so crucial for this. And it actually reminded me of the movie Wonder. And if you've watched this movie with Julia Roberts, there's a moment in that is kind of like the climax of the movie is the boy Augie has had this blow up with one of his friends. And the place that they found forgiveness and reconciliation was not in a face-to-face conversation, but it was in a Minecraft game where Augie found his friend. And it was there that his friend said, "I'm sorry for what I said." And we're raising kids and students in a digital world where they are digital natives, where many of us are still on the learning curve of it. And we're finding ourselves in that place where we need to make sure that relationships are a priority. And all the tactics and all the strategies that they're talking about here this morning lead us forward in that conversation. How do we have relationships in this time frame? So as we move forward, let's give away some stuff. Invite Carolyn Norkus up here, who's our kids ministry director here at Chapel Point. Yeah. Her and her team are the ones taking care of your kids that at some point you will have to pick them up. We don't keep them forever. We want to partner with you to help you lead your homes to follow Jesus. We don't want to raise them ourselves, okay? That's not what we do here. So who do we got first, Miss Carolyn?
Brianna Coster?
We've got good pictures and bad pictures to help you talk with that. So come on up here, grab your book. Notice I'm letting her say the names because I don't want to butcher yours. I've already done enough of that tonight. So I promise no more name butchering on behalf of me. So, all right, who we got next?
Mike Day.
Mike's winning one of my favorite resources is TechWise Family by Andy Crouch, who is... He was one of the editors for Christianity Today, and he actually has a phrase where he talks about tech-wise families and how we are in the information age where your kids and your students, and we don't actually have to live in community in that relationship. That's what makes it so important to have relationships, because they can get the answers, but what they don't have is the wisdom that comes from you, parents, and the community around them. And so this is an incredible book, TechWise Family by Andy Crouch. So Mike Day, they may have left. I thought they were sitting over there earlier, but there's Jessica. Mike Day, ladies and gentlemen, make some noise. There you go, buddy. Whoop, whoop. So this is yours, man. One of my favorites by Andy Crouch. TechWise Family, a must for you to check out with that. Because again, they can have all the information, but if they don't know how to apply that information, it's a complete miss when it comes to raising our kids and navigating the digital culture they live in. So next,
You can say this one.
I can say this one because it's one of my friends. Mark, I think it's Holtink. Just kidding, there you go. So he's got what's on your phone. So there's the man, the myth, the legend, Mark Holtink. And last but not least, this is Good Pictures and Bad Pictures Junior. So how do you have that conversation at a younger age as well? And this one is Miss Kylie
Zomerly.
That's right. Notice I didn't say that one. I just call them the Z family because I don't want to butcher their name. So now that we got a running joke for our hundreds of people to make fun of me, I love this. So, man, so we are excited to continue the conversation. We got a few more bits of information from Chris and Dave, Scott, and Thomas, and whatever you guys want to be called at this moment.
Crushing it with names today, like even your own people.
It's kind of what I do. You know, I just make it up as I go.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. Cool. Well, thank you, everybody. I have some really good questions up here, and we'll be happy to answer a few more afterwards. So if you have been taking notes, the third digital trend that you see up on the screen here is that parents are still the key. Grandparents, guardians, right? You are still the key in whether or not a kid uses tech well. I want you to read some of those statements underneath that trend. They add some more color to those 5 phrases, those relational phrases that we had earlier, right? Our words, our actions, be conversational, be curious, strive for connection, not perfection, right? Not condemnation, be persistent, be consistent, talk to them about all of the awkward things that no one talked to you about when you were growing up. Model the right behaviors, show them the way. It was last year one time that Rose Crawford from our presentation team, she was at a local school here in West Michigan, actually, and she was in front of a group of second graders. Now, doing internet safety talks with second graders is just hilarious. You get done, and they want to tell you about all the funny videos that they love, right, what their favorite YouTube stuff is. And so afterwards, it's like this mob of kids that always come up to you like, this and that. Dude Perfect is a big one, right? We talked about that one earlier. My kids love that. But at this talk, there's a second grade boy who approached Rose and said, "Miss Rose," and he was crying his eyes out. Okay, like we don't want to make second graders cry. This is not an objective of our presentations. So she's like, "Oh my gosh, honey, what's wrong?" I said, "Miss Rose, I've told my mom to put her phone down, and she just won't." Like through tears, this second grader was recognizing that the phone is more important than he is. And Rose told me that story, and so I made that image that you see up on the screen there, right? Would you want them using their devices just like you? Your kids are watching you constantly, because the number one complaint that I hear from young people, now, I get it. I've worked with teenagers for almost 20 years now, and now I've got one in my house. You have to take what they say, divide it by 2, and multiply by 0.1. I get it, to get like actually what is really going on. But I think that there's an ounce of truth to that. The kids are tired of being told to put their phone down and not use social media so much, and don't watch it so much, and don't lay in bed and just watch it all the time. And guess what? You go to bed every night with Candy Crush, or you use it as an alarm clock yourself, or every single time you're dropping them off at school, you're on the phone, or when it buzzes, you have to check. They're watching us, and so we've got to be careful, because when you look at all of the research, there's something really consistent that the research tells us that I'm going to share with you after a short video, because earlier we talked about tricky people, and it's really easy for us to think that most of the danger, which honestly I think a lot of it is, but not all of it, that most of the danger are other people. But have you ever thought about the way in which you use technology can sometimes be creating digital risk for your kids? Right, the things that we do. Some parents are a greater risk than any predator. And so I want to show you a back to school segment that we did going back to school, not for 2019, but for 2018. Some of you may have seen this on Fox 17, where I explored some of the risks that we create as parents when we're using technologies in certain ways.
There's truly no such thing as absolute privacy when it comes to the things that we share online. And so if I'm uncomfortable at all with anybody potentially getting their hands on this, then just don't do it. You can't be too careful.
Well, it's that time of year, parents busy getting their kids ready to head back to school. And so many of us are posting pictures online of our children. I am guilty of it, picture after picture. We're proud of them. But have you ever thought beyond that picture? Experts say you could be putting your kids at risk.
We underestimate, as people who use technology, the amount of information we're sharing about ourselves to the rest of the world.
Nearly half the world's population uses the internet. More than 1 billion are active on Facebook, and more than 100 million people use Instagram every month.
It's not until you turn a digital situation into an analog reality does what we do online make sense.
Chris McKenna is the founder of Protecting Young Eyes, a way to equip and encourage parents and students to use technology responsibly.
When it comes to parents and the information that we share about our own families, there's this tension that always exists between social media wants you to brag, and through that bragging you receive likes and comments and more friends. But have you ever thought about what you're sharing?
Really think about that question for a second.
We often get caught up on the other side of, 100 people liked my picture, and that means I'm going to post another one, and isn't it cute, and hashtag my kids are beautiful. But how much information are we sharing about those pictures with a lot of people who we lightly know?
Because remember, the definition of a friend on social media compared to in real life are two different things.
Over time, you accept, you don't actually keep track of who is in your friend list. And then take a picture of your son or daughter and say, would I hand this photo to every single one of those people. Here, I want you to have this photo of my son or daughter in front of their school bus, which says the name of the school, and I've told them how to find my child.
Personal information you may not even realize you're sharing. The parks you visit, your child's birthday and favorite things, and you're giving all of that information away to thousands of people.
If I have bad intent and if I'm looking for photos of young kids taking a bath, it's extremely difficult to find what I'm looking for, except if they're hashtagged. Hashtags create categories of content that if someone with bad intent, you make their job easy.
And if that's not enough to make you think twice, consider this. McKenna says by the time a child turns 2, 90% of them already have a social media presence.
We have a whole generation of young people who are going to become adults someday, who are going to have a social media footprint already created, that they had no say in what their parents posted about them. They just kind of have to live with it.
McKenna says checking your privacy settings on all your social media platforms is key to prevent too much from being shared outside of your friends list. But he also wants to leave you with this.
I would challenge parents to not share as much as they currently do. It's okay.
And so
yeah, McKenna says share those pictures maybe, you know, with your friends and family in a text message, not necessarily posting everything online. So here's 5 questions to ask yourself about web privacy. When my children become adults, will they appreciate every photo I've posted of their life and the hashtags I've used? And number 2, is there something selfish in me that uses pictures of my child to get personal attention? Kind of interesting. Number 3, do my kids constantly see me taking pictures of them and posting them online? And have I recently performed an audit of the privacy settings on my device? And what about my child's devices? And I'll put a link to all of this up on our website. And as well, Chris has all laid out how you
I think you get the idea.
If,
you get the idea from that, right? And so something that I've started doing is every single time I take a picture of my kids, I ask their permission as to whether or not I can post it online. My daughter just had homecoming in Caledonia, which, break my heart. Little girl's going to homecoming. And I took pictures, and it was with her girlfriends, right? And so I asked permission of Megan and Natalie's moms in this photo with the 3 of them, whether or not it was okay. And I asked Natalie, Megan, and Lauren whether or not it was okay to post this photo on social media. I started doing the same thing for my boys, my 9-year-olds. Hey, Cole, I just took this picture of you in your Halloween costume. Dude, do you mind if I put that on Facebook? Right? Is that okay? Because I want them to understand from a very young age that taking pictures of somebody else is a very important, responsibility-filled activity. And that I don't take that lightly. And it's giving them some ownership in that. And I want them to sort of feel some of that. So a few other questions that parents ask us, then when we'll land this plane here, go like this, right? What's the right parental control solution? Some of those things have been alluded to even in the books that were just given away. If you go to the back, I guess it's page 3 of your note-taking guide, you're going to see a whole list of different caring control, parental control sort of solutions that we have tested, that we have vetted. There's so many of them out there, but we have spent a ton of time doing some of that research for you. Now listen, if you're using one that's not on our list, that doesn't mean you're a horrible parent. And it doesn't mean that it happens to be horrible. We just happen, to whatever reason, we didn't put it on our list because we could probably find 20 or 25 that are good, but when we give you that much choice, we tend to not do anything. It's paralysis by choice, right? By too many options. And so we've whittled it down to a list. But if you, for example, you're a family that use Custodio and you love Custodio, great. Read our review about it, about some of the ways in which kids can hack and circumvent it. But if it's working, keep using it. But if you don't know what to use, then we've got some there that we recommend. But it's not just a toggle. It's not just a piece of software. When it comes to parental controls or caring controls, there's, we believe, multiple layers that are necessary to get this right. Right? And we've referred to some of these already. The conversations are important. I think the conversations are a beautiful and a very effective kind of intangible control around the decisions that your kids make. Location matters too. I'm telling you, where kids use technology often dictates how they use technology. And there's certain places I just don't think that kids should be online. They shouldn't be online in bedrooms to the extent that you can control that. Now, I got to be honest. I'll tell you, like with Lauren, when you've got 3 annoying little brothers in a fairly small house, your bedroom is the only place where you have refuge. So if she's got homework to do and it needs the Chromebook, our rule is simply that the screen has to be facing the door and the door has to be partially opened. That's it. Right? So and honestly, I'm at ProtectYoungEyes where I work, a bunch of adults, our corporate policy is that the screen must be visible from the hallway so that we are not tempted to make bad choices online at an anti-pornography company. Right? I mean, why even create the temptation? Right? So that's a similar thing that we've done in my house with Lauren. It's like, okay, hon, I get it. They are annoying. Okay? If you got to go to your room, cool. Just keep the door open. Great, cool. Right? That's a way that gets to the same principle. You know what I'm saying? Right? It mitigates the risk, but just understand bedrooms, bathrooms are a risky spot, sleepovers are a sleepy spot, and school buses are a sleepy spot. Risky spot. Right? Sleepovers, bathrooms, bedrooms, school buses. Those are places where we go, you know what? To the extent that I can control it, I just don't want kids online in those places. I think those are risky places. Way too many moms saying, you wouldn't believe what my kid saw on the bus. I'm like, oh, man. When you talk about a horrible adult-to-child ratio, look at school buses. You hope the only one there isn't paying attention to your kid. They're driving, right? And so, wireless network, we spoke about that earlier. Clean DNS is a great way. If you haven't replaced your router in 5 years, it's probably time. It's probably time. The technology has changed. A lot of them come with parental controls like straight up on them, right? That you can get a Netgear router that already has Circle with Disney on it, so you don't have to buy a separate device and connect it to the router. If you haven't replaced your router in 5 years, it is worth $150 to get a new one. And we recommend some on our website that are going to be worth your money, okay? You're going to want to do that. And then at the device level, it's not always attached to the network. That's where if you're an Apple family, you should know what screen time is. It's free, and it comes on every iOS device. The iPad now has its own version of it, as does every iPhone. If you're an Android family with Android tablets, because they're usually a lot less expensive than the iPad, then you should know what Family Link is. Again, free and available, and actually getting better and better. I almost like it better than screen time now in terms of its flexibility. It's the one thing that Google seems to be doing slightly better. Right? These are free ways that when it's not attached to your home network, it's controlled in some way, carrying control, right? So these are the layers of parental controls, and again, you see these logos in the back of your guide too. One that we've recently started recommending a little bit more is Gab Wireless. There's never been a good phone solution for tweens, right? The only thing was really this big dorky watch that nobody wanted to wear, okay? And they were good for a little while. I mean, the Gizmo watches were good, but you don't want to be the kid who's, I got the Gizmo. I really want your iPhone, okay? I'm just being straight. I know it's been a long time since you were 11, right? But finally, Gab Wireless, they're a startup out in Utah, and we are a big promoter of them. Palm has done something similar where it's actually an iPhone-looking device that is not connected to the internet, right? This is a phone that has contacts that you can call on, that you can text on, and you can take pictures on. Oh, but you can't attach the photos to a text message. Why? Because it's designed with safety in mind instead of addiction, instead of exploitation. It was designed with 11-year-olds in mind. Hallelujah! Why did it take till 2019 for this to happen? Right? And so training them, like training wheels, toward an iPhone or toward a Samsung, whatever, right? This is a device that kind of stands in that gap between when they're just tablet worthy and when they're phone worthy. Something now can kind of bridge that gap that we're very, very happy to recommend. Another question we get is, what's the right amount of screen time or gaming for my kid? Raise your hand if you've ever wondered. This one. Anybody? All right, yes, right? This is a great question. Now, we've looked at all the places, whether it's the American Pediatrics Association, whether it's the World Health Organization, and when you boil it all down, they all agree on 3 things. Number 1, almost everyone agrees that less is better. Number 2, almost all of them agree that no children under 2 should have any sedentary screen time. In fact, the World Health Organization goes as far to say that children who have minimal screen experiences up to age 5 tend to be more productive adults. Like, they've gone as far to say that even. Now, number 3 then, obvious that almost everyone agrees that how adults use tech impacts how kids use tech. Here's what I don't want this list of things to do, because moms don't need any more help feeling guilty about things. You do not need to feel guilty about the fact that the only way that you can get a shower is by letting your 20-month-old watch something on the iPad. It's okay, all right? It's okay. I've been in that situation where it's like, just give me a minute, watch this. And you just got to go I get it, okay? So that's what they say. Here's what I don't want. It just shouldn't be an attention pacifier, okay? It should not be what you hand them when they are in distress. Because if every single time a kid is crying, whether it's in the grocery store or at home, and they learn that the way that they soothe themselves is through a video on an iPad, that starts to create a disconnect between them and you as the solution to their distress. And it starts to create an oxytocin-driven neurological connection to what's happening on that screen. And I think it starts to plant seeds of attention issues and addiction very early. We just need to be careful of. Again, just don't turn it into a pacifier. Now, you can look at the research. There's all kinds of lists if you want to look at it yourself, but we've kind of boiled it down to those 3 things, and we've written about them in this blog post here. Another way that I answer that question about what's the right amount of screen time is the inverse. What happens when you take it away? If every single time you take the device away, your child turns into an alter version of him or herself, and they become a rage monster, then they're probably getting too much screen time. So I use this one with my boys all the time, where I'll be like, all right, guys, it's time to put it down. And they've kind of learned that their first response matters. It matters. Right? We have a phrase that we've used in my house that if you get mad when I take it away, whatever you're playing is gone for at least a day. Right? Just to kind of create that. Guys, listen, I do not want that simple, like, 1 round of Smash Bros is not the end of the world, dude. It's not worth getting mad. It's not worth throwing it, right? It's not worth it. It's going to be okay.
Since coming to work for Protect Young Eyes, this has become a huge part in me and my daughter's, vocabulary. And now she actually quotes it, and I'll actually see her get mad about something. Then she says, "Daddy, please don't take it away. I know I'm going to lose it for a day, but, lose it tomorrow." And I'm like, well, we're going to work through this, but yeah.
Awesome.
So.
That's so, I already liked Amelia, but now I like her more. That's great. That's good. That's good. So friends, I want to land coming back to where I started with some of these summary statements around the things that we believe. If we could get those up on the screen, guys in the back, this is really important. If you could take everything that we've talked about, it kind of falls into just 2 general buckets. There's a lot of things I'm sure you've written down. But there's really just a few things I want you to focus on. It's that relational side and a few technical things. Let's get this stuff down. And then kind of step by step, day by day, week by week, pull up the notes, pick off a few other things, right? But assess your router. Like I said, if it's old, it's time to replace it, right? Get YouTube under control. I think we've made it abundantly clear that it can be good, but there's pits and swamps and places we just don't want our kids. Block the porn, clean DNS. And guess what? If you get the router right, sometimes you get 2 and 3 with it. Like, you can take care of both of those things where routers can enforce restricted mode on YouTube no matter who's using it, like at the router level. Or you can have clean DNS at the router level. So if you get number 1 right, you kind of get a 3-for-1 package sometimes, okay? Family link or screen time, I referred to those. If you don't know what they are, just look at the website under devices and iOS, or devices under Android. And then if you need something more, Bark is a solution that we highly recommend for social media monitoring. It does a really good job. We love what they do. And of course, I'm a big fan of CovenantEyes. CovenantEyes has been a part of my story for a long time. as a guy, and you can read about it, I've written all about it, as a guy who has struggled with porn for a lot of years, Covenant Eyes is an important part of my life, even now. It's not just something that you use when you've got a problem. It's something that you use so that you don't go back to problems, right? Accountability works for all of us, right? And so to put deposits in that digital bank with Lauren knows that Dad uses Covenant Eyes. She doesn't know all my junk. Lauren knows that, like this morning, I went and met with Pastor Marcus, who is my accountability partner. Because it's important for Lauren, in her trust of me, to know that even Dad needs help using the internet well. That shows her that it's not just her. And if we're honest, we all probably need a little bit of help, a little bit of tweak, a little bit of adjustment. It could just be a couple of degrees to the right or to the left. But may we first show them how to use technology well so that they will follow us, okay? So important. So again, a number of ways that you can keep in touch with us through the different social networks. You can text us to get involved with the newsletter, but we are Protect Young Eyes. We are a national resource, but we live in West Michigan. So we first want to be a resource here. You're my peeps. You're our peeps, right? We're right here. And Carolyn and I and her family have a long history, so we love the amazing things that are happening here at Chapel Point. I'm sure some of you are here that maybe aren't a part of the Chapel Point family. We love you too. But if you have any questions about anything, because a lot of this stuff can feel overwhelming right now, and it's not until you're like 5 days removed, you're in the car, and I wish I would have asked him this. Just reach out. You can find us a number of different ways, and we'll hang out here for a few minutes afterwards. So, Luke, is there anything that needs to happen here in closing from the church side? I want to give you whoa.
I'm going to surprise you.
Whoa, Ninja Man.
That's right, man.
Yeah. Wow, you're stealthy.
That's what I do, you know. Hey, so we want to say thank you, man. You guys give a round of applause for the crew here from Chris and Dave. We're so thankful for what they do because it's so needed in our culture, because there's a lot of us in this room and so many countless other people that just need to be equipped. So thank you guys for leading the charge for so many people and asking the questions that sometimes we didn't even know what to ask. And I just want to tell you guys as a staff, I know some of you guys aren't from Chapel Point, but Covenant Eyes is a thing most of our staff actually has, and we're accountable to one another as a staff. So it's a part of the thing that we do internally to say, hey, we will be above reproach in this. And here's the thing about it. As we talked through, I hope you guys have heard their heart. It's in relationship that it happens. This is the heartbeat of our Father. It's why Jesus came to the earth, so that we would have a relationship through Jesus with him, not just a list of rules and do's and don'ts and roadblocks and fences put in place so that we wouldn't fall or we wouldn't sin or we wouldn't struggle, but it's that we would walk together so that we can navigate when we struggle. And so we're really thankful you guys are having that conversation with us and helping us navigate that ourselves, because that's what the church is for. It's how we navigate moving forward, is in relationship, not saying, oh, you're wrong or you're bad, or pouring guilt and shame on our kids or on one another, but equipping each other to walk in the full life that Jesus has for us. And so that's what we want to do as a church. If you're not from around here, don't have a church home, we want to make sure you feel welcome here. Any way that we can serve you guys, we want to make ourselves available, but especially with the team from Covenant Eyes. Got a couple other giveaways, and then, these guys will be available for some questions and answers down here, but we just want to say thank you, and at some point, pick your children up. That's all we got for you. So, a couple quick books to give away. Heather Kill, got one for you right here. And then got another one, now of course, I'm going to get a name, I'm probably going to say bad, but it looks like Jan Van Eek, or an H, I don't know. So Jan Van something right here, got you one, which is really hard in a Dutch land, that could be anybody. Fantastic. I'm from Texas, so I'm just going to blame the South on all of the name stuff tonight. And real nice and easy, JB Gray got you a book and a resource here as well. So those are there. So I want to thank you guys for being here tonight, and Chris and Dave will be here to answer any questions. If we can do this for you guys, let us know. Thanks for being here tonight.
Before we start